Hello and welcome back to the Hill and Valley. This is Nick Roby. Once again, we have a very special guest here today on the podcast. We have Clemson's own Terrence Oglesby, two-time graduate, eight-year professional overseas, and now working for the Field of 68. He is joining us again on the podcast. T.O., how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Special guest is strong. That's just that's a little too much there. I'm a Hill and Valley veteran. I've been on here before, so I don't feel like I'm all that special. No, thank you for having me on. We're so close yet so far away. It feels like schedules are coming together as far as what games I'm going to be fortunate enough to call. So I'm looking forward to that, and then also just looking forward to college basketball being back in general. I need it in my life because I just enjoy it so much, and I'm happy that we get to come on and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, we're having you on Clemson basketball. It's right around the corner. I mean, it's November 7th. We're right around the corner for another big season. And I think this is gonna be a very interesting season. Like we were talking about right before we started recording. There's just so many things of just like, there's so many this fun freshman class to watch. I mean, you got PJ Hall another year going. I mean, it's gonna be a very interesting team to watch, especially with like them trying to make the NCAA tournament. So I'm excited. And also I think sometimes Clemson fans, we get so into football that sometimes basketball season sneaks up on us. And I was like, we're going to get rolling right away. We got South Carolina game 2. I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah, game 2, which could be good, could be bad, depending on how you look at it, because PJ Hall, you alluded to him, like he's one of the best players in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And whenever you're the best player or one of the best players in the ACC, you're one of the best players in the country. I think one of the big things, Nick, that you look forward to is how is he going to do early in the season? Because as soon as last season was over, had foot surgery, then he's out all summer. And then he comes back in August and then does something to his knee, has a minor knee surgery. So he had no offseason whatsoever. He had no preseason whatsoever. And then what happens? You play South Carolina in game 2, but you're a little bit older in South Carolina because South Carolina is in the middle of a rebuild with Lamont Paris and Gigi Jackson, the number 1 player in the class of 2023, reclassing to 2022 and then going and playing for the Gamecocks. There's a lot going on there. They're inexperienced. PJ has a chance of being out of shape. Obviously, we don't know how that stuff is going as far as, is he practicing? Is he not practicing? Is he going to be cardio wise ready to go in game 2? That's a big concern, but you open up November 7th against Citadel, and then you go straight to South Carolina, the rivalry game. But I'm caught up in football too, Nick. I mean, I come to all the Clemson home games. I enjoy being a part of it. But basketball season is slowly but surely creeping around the corner, as you say, and there are a lot of different unique storylines to this season, especially with the Clemson Tigers. There's a lot going on with that program, and it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of those younger players kind of pick up the slack moving into this season.
Yeah. I'm super pumped, and I think it's just like a very interesting, like we're saying, a very interesting storyline. So just recapping last year real quick, they went 17-16, 8-12 in conference, so finishing 10th. Brad Brownell's going into he's been there for 13 years. I think it's going into his 14th year. Interesting notes from the Almanac too. Shout out to Field of 68. I was really enjoying that. They haven't had a losing season.
They did a nice job with that. I wasn't a big part of it, but they put, I want to say it was, 5,000 or 6,000 words per team, every team in the country. I mean, we're talking MEAC even, like, it was incredibly well done, but I was not a part of that.
No, you weren't, but you're doing your own thing too. I love it. So between the two of y'all, I would say, like, if you haven't gotten to and you just want to know some more about each team, between the two of y'all, I think you can be ready to go on pretty much anybody you want to know. But I was just some impressive stats. They haven't had a losing season since 2012, 2013. Yeah. So they kept that streak going. But we do lose 4 of the top 7 scorers, and we have been to the postseason for the past 5 years. It doesn't feel like that as much, but 2 when you count the NIT as well. So it's very interesting. I mean, you have the new AD with Graham Neff, and he's staying on.
Who's been here for a while?
He's been here for a while.
It's not like They just moved him up, and that was the right move. I mean, Graham Neff is a very,
Yeah.
very bright person. Like
Oh yeah.
that was the correct move. That's what needed to
I
happen.
100%. It seemed like it was a done deal as soon as Radakovich moves on, and you know it it seems like
Which, by the
like
way, Nick,
mhm,
by the
mhm.
way, do yourself a favor and never tweet out an AD is leaving before they want it to happen, because I did that with Radakovich and got in
uh
so much trouble. I thought it was common knowledge, and I tweeted it out. What a bad idea that was. I went to Clemson prison for a solid 2 weeks. So,
oh
like, I didn't
man.
even know Clemson prison was a thing. Don't do that.
Okay. Good to know. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
I did not know that was a thing. Maybe that's
Oh, it's a thing.
yeah, there you go. That's hilarious. Yeah, so just new AD, and it just seems like it's Brad wants his team and needs his team to go to the tournament. It just seems like, or they might have to make a move, and I know the fans are wanting that too. And but it's a very interesting team to try to make that happen, because I think also you lose maybe a little bit more than you might be thinking, and you don't get a guy like Llewellyn. We don't have a true point guard
Wait,
necessarily.
for those who don't
Oh
know who
yes, yes,
Llewellyn is. Yeah. Yeah, he was a Princeton transfer that committed to Clemson in July, I believe it was,
something
Nick.
like that. Yeah,
6'3", 6'4" point guard, really, really talented, former top 100 kid, just decided to go to the Ivy League because he wanted a great education. Good for that guy. And it ends up committing to Clemson, backing out of his commitment when an assistant coach elected to go to another school. And then when that happened, Llewellyn ends up at Michigan. Now you lose Alamir Dawes, you lose
right,
Nick Honor
right.
at arguably the most important position in college basketball, point guard. Now, you look at the way the NBA's played these days, you can have a bunch of different guys bring the ball up the floor. The point guard position is not necessarily super important.
Yeah,
However, in college basketball, it's huge how important
yeah.
that
It's
position is.
paramount. Yeah,
It's paramount. And you look at who Clemson has running the point this year, it's going to be by committee. And when I say that, it's Chase Hunter, who's been a two guard for the majority of his college career. And then
hmm
his brother, who is a freshman, and he's a very talented freshman, but he's still a freshman. That being said, the bright spot within that is if you can just get it past half court under Brad Brownell, he's going to be able to micromanage some offense to get your team shots. It's
yeah,
just a matter of, are you going to be able to get that ball past half court, because you have a bunch of guys who aren't necessarily used to playing that position.
yeah. And you're probably going to expect some more pressure, like guys being picked up more when they know that that's a
Well, think
pressure
about who
point.
they're playing. I mean,
Yeah,
you look at your league, like the ACC, North Carolina, look at their league guards, RJ Davis, Caleb Love. I mean, do they
right.
play do they play defense like every other Thursday? Yeah. But like if they decide to play defense on that one day, like it's going to make it hard. You look at somebody like a Duke, Jeremy Roach, like a Virginia, Reese
hmm
Beekman, Kihei Clark, like a Florida State, Jalen Worley, 6'5", Caleb Mills, 6'5", Matthew Cleveland, 6'8". And the reason I know so much about Florida State is because I have them on opening night for Raycom. So like you look around the league, guard play is really, really good. And then you're going to try to put some freshmen into the mix really, really quick. And you just got to throw them in the fire, because it is not going to be easy for those guys to get their footing. But you hope that they figure it out sooner rather than later, because you can't drop too many in the non-conference.
Yeah, you really can't with the. I mean, Clemson's picked right now to finish between 11th and 14th based on
Depending on who you talk to.
depending on who you talk to. And I think honestly, we were talking about. I think that's right. I think like you're just very inexperienced, and you don't know when PJ Hall's coming back. So we can kind of talk.
For those who don't know, sorry to interrupt you, Nick, but for
No,
those who
please,
don't
yeah,
know, it is very expected for him to be back very early in the season.
yeah. I was hearing
Like
November.
potentially for game 1, game 2. That being said, he hasn't played. Like he
Yeah,
hasn't been in practice. Like I think
yeah,
he's gone through, I want to say you could count how many practices he's done on 2 hands by the time the season starts.
yeah,
So it's like, how ready is he going to be? And when he's your best player, that's an issue, right?
yeah. And when the offense goes through him, I mean,
Exactly.
it really does, and it just changes everything. And that's what's going to follow up with, because like you got PJ Hall, who like is going to play, but you would probably maybe he would stamina wise, he might play like half of a game. So you're looking at like a Shefflin, you're looking at a Middlebrooks, like going to get a lot of minutes. And so I feel like the offense changes a lot, not a lot, but like
which you
he's
can
the
get
center
away
point.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
you can get away with that in a non-conference, because if you look
yeah.
at their schedule, Citadel first, South Carolina second, South Carolina not huge in the front line. Like you can get away with a Shiflin playing a lot of minutes. He's somebody who can pass the ball. Are you going to be able to limp along long enough to make it happen? I don't have their schedule pulled up here, Nick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you do. I want to pull it up real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are their what's their first 5 games?
First 5 games are actually pretty favorable, all things considered, because you got Citadel at home. You go on the road to South Carolina, but that's a road game you're not on.
That's a scary road game.
It is a scary road game. SC Upstate. I think it's Bellmeyer.
It's Bellarmine who won their league. All right, so here's where it gets tricky. And so you have Upstate, who's going to be in contention to win the Big South. That's an underrated scheduling game, because if they win the Big South and they go to the tournament, that's looked at as a great win in the eyes of the committee. You move on to Bellarmine, or they won their league last year, but because they're in the D2 to D1 transition, they couldn't go to the tournament. That being said, this year, if they win it again, they go to the tournament. You look at Loyola, Maryland, that's part of the Emerald Coast Classic. You look at Iowa, who Fran McCaffrey always has those guys playing well. Chris Murray, brother of Keegan Murray, another good one. Penn State, the ACC Big Ten Challenge, another tough game. Penn State's getting better under Micah Shrewsbury. Really difficult game to win. And then you have Friday, December 2nd, Wake Forest with Davion Williamson and Tyree Appleby, a Florida transfer who can really go extremely quick. Old guards, that's tough. Towson, unanimously selected to win the CAA. So like, this is not an easy schedule. It looks like it's an easy schedule on paper, right? This is not an easy schedule. Towson's really, really good. Pat Scarry can coach his nuts off. And then you move on to Loyola Chicago at the Holiday Hoops Giving. Yeah. Like they have dudes.
And Richmond can play too.
That's right. Like this, when you get to Christmas, like the easiest game after Loyola, Maryland, the easiest game after that's arguably Georgia Tech on December 21st. Like this is not an easy non-conference schedule. What I will give credit, and Dick Bender, assistant coach Dick Bender, that's his name, is excellent at scheduling. That is a reason, even though Clemson is, oh gosh, who knows whether it be, 3 or 4 games above 500 on the regular season, they're going to be on the bubble because their non-conference schedule is really good. However, those games are tough to win. If you look a couple of years ago, they played Louisiana. They ended up going on to win their league. Like there's an art to it. There's a reason why Wake Forest didn't make the tournament last year. It's because of scheduling. There's a reason NC State has struggled getting in the tournament when they've had decent teams in conference plays because of the non-conference scheduling. Clemson's knocked that out. This year, though, without a proven point guard, there's a lot of games that you can get lost in the weeds. So if those freshmen are going to be put to the fire quickly, however, they are talented enough to where they should be able to carry the load for the most part, but they're going to have to grow up really quick. I got off on a tangent right there. I'm sorry, Nick.
No, you're good. I love it. All right. So we alluded to it, but what would you say, what would be your solution for the point guard play right now? We talked about like the Hunters and probably I would think Chase Hunter gets the first look, but what would you think if you were the coach, like what would be the combo you would try to go with?
Well, you look at a couple of different things, really. And Dylan Hunter is obviously going to be in the mix, but Josh Beadle is going to have to be ready a year earlier than what everybody thought he was going to be. And he is very loose with the basketball. I'm just going to throw that out there. He's going to throw it in the third row, but he's also going to be able to get downhill, and he's going to have some finishes this year that are just crazy. He's super athletic. And if you're going to go to Rock the John, he's going to be able to show you something, as is Chase Hunter. So if you don't have that on your schedule, go and do Rock the John. I think it's going to be a fun experience for everybody because those two are really, really good athletes. The combination of Josh Beadle, Chase Hunter, Dylan Hunter, basically number 0, number 1, number 2, too. Those three guys are going to be handling the ball for the majority of the time this season. How soon can Dylan get ready? How safe with the ball is Josh Beadle going to be? Because he redshirted last year. Because from a maturity perspective, I'm not sure he's quite there. That being said, the natural talent is there. So we'll see how that goes. The problem with letting Chase Hunter being the primary ball handler, you're kind of taking him away from what he's best at. And that's being an aggressive rim attack guard who can score in the mid-range and find ways to be aggressive. If he's able to stay healthy, he's going to have a huge year. Health has been an issue for him as well. So you look at this team between those three guys, that's who you're going to have step up in a big way. But that's a redshirt freshman, that's a true freshman, and that's a junior, or I'm not sure with all the COVID stuff, that's a junior in Chase Hunter, who's never really played the point guard position as his primary focus. So with that question mark in mind, that's what makes you most nervous. But those three players right there, if one of the three can become a consistent 25-minute a game guy and hold it down 2 turnovers or below, like that's going to be a huge thing, because if you just get that team in their offense, Brad Brownell is going to be able to get them shots.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and you have some shooters. You got Brevin Galloway, younger brother, who I think is just ironic that he has his lights out game in Clemson last year, and then he comes from BC, has an extra year that he didn't know about, and then he came down, so he's going to be probably one of the guards out there. You got Alex Hemingway, who I've seen some things people talking about him being a ball handler. I think he's a better fit personally as a wing guy.
He's not going to be able to. He's not a shot creator for others.
No.
He's a shooter. He's a defender. He's a ball mover. He is not somebody that's going to light the world on fire and be a pure point guard. He is an excellent role player who will shoot above 40% from three. He is insanely valuable because of that last part. And he's a very good defender. He's just what he is he's a solid piece that's going to have games where he could shift the momentum of a game because he can shoot the ball, but he's not a point guard in that sense.
Right. Yeah. I've been reading that a little bit, and I think just knowing that team, he just doesn't seem like that. So I could see like Hunter Tyson. I think he plays like him coming back, I think plays a major role from this team. Just because you have PJ Hall's maybe coming back sooner than maybe we would. You're trying to see him getting folded. So you having a senior guy like that is really big time. But so we're talking like who is like all these different pieces. It feels like we're having a lot of pieces trying to either fit new roles or freshmen trying to step up. Who is somebody, I mean, somebody we've already talked about, but who is somebody you're really looking forward to be like, this guy's going to step up in a new role, and we're going to be talking about that come December, January?
You know what? That's a little bit of a hard one, but yeah. I think a guy, and I'm not sure how soon it's going to be. That's kind of the hang up that you run into here, because gosh, he's talented. And man, I've been to 2 practices, and both practices, you just sit there and you're just like, holy cow, this kid could be a pro later. He's just not quite ready yet. And that's the young man from Atlanta, Chauncey Wiggins, 6'10", 205 pounds. He's playing the wing. He's not even playing the 4 position. Because that's where his skill set lies. He's a little narrow shouldered, but he's got good legs. He can really defend. He's long at that size, can shoot the basketball and can handle it some. How good is he going to be soon? That's remains to be seen, because at 6'10", 205, you're like, well, he weighs 205 pounds. Yeah, but he's 6'10". That's a lot of bone. Like he's a narrow built kid. Is he going to be able to compete physically early? That's going to be a major concern. The first time I saw him during the summer, I was like, I'm not quite sure. A couple of summers ago, he could be good. Where is he going to play? I don't know. He gets to campus, and it's like the increase in talent that he's playing against, his game just blossomed. He's a guy that moving forward, Clemson fans are going to be really excited about, because he's about as skilled a big man that they've had that can operate on the perimeter since Dante Grantham. And now physically, I don't know where he's going to be at, but from a skill perspective, at his size, man, like oozes potential.
Yeah, I love that. Shout out though. I don't know how this happened, but we have 3 versions of Hunters and 2 Chaunceys on this team. It's just for when it comes to names on this team. Good luck to to the commentators trying to figure out all these
Well,
ones. But
I'm doing a couple of them this year. I'm doing a
yeah,
couple of them.
you can keep them straight.
I'm doing Bellarmine, and I'm doing the Towson game.
Okay.
So that's before Christmas. After Christmas, I'm not exactly sure, but those are the two that I've been assigned so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I've heard fun things about these freshmen, and
Really
I just,
good.
yeah,
Really
really
good.
good.
Now, how good they're going to be soon? That's the big question. Like, bigs can adjust a little bit quicker sometimes. RJ Godfrey, whose dad played for the Dallas Cowboys as a linebacker for a long time, was a really good player. Like, RJ is physically ready to compete right now. Just because 6'7", 225, can go 3-4, can play some different spots, is fairly switchable, 2 through 4, 3 through 5, something like that, 2 through 5. It's just, is he skilled enough to play right away? But physically, he's ready to go from day one. Chauncey Gibson, the other Chauncey, he needs time. He's probably out of the 4 freshmen. He's the one that, I'm not going to say the word behind, but he's not as ready to compete right now. He's going to be a very good player, but he's a guy that the learning curve is pretty steep because he went to a high school in Texas that has really good talent, but I'm not quite sure that he's learned how to play under somebody like a Brad Brownell. There's a lot of terminology there. There is a lot that's thrown at you. There's a lot of different defensive coverages there. It takes time for some guys. He could fall into that category, but that freshman class is really good, Nick.
Yeah. I love it. Just wanting people to watch, because I think like there's a lot of unknowns with this team, but I think too at the same time there's a lot of upside, and I think if as fans you can get behind this team, I think it'd be a fun one to watch. And I think but they might need a little bit of time to get going. But the problem is the window's just not very long when it comes to like trying to make the tournament and everything. So saying that, I feel like the ACC is kind of split up into a little bit of tiers, you could probably say, of just like where Clemson we're talking about is fitting between like an 11 to 14. But, when you're trying to make the tournament, like, I mean,
you're looking at 7, maybe 8 teams this year.
Yeah,
it's a better ACC this year.
It's a better ACC. So you need to finish, at least in that kind of a range.
Right.
Who are peers of Clemson that you're like, when we look at the schedule, you're like, okay, Clemson needs to play well, needs to win these kind of games. Like they're like the separators that make you from an 8 instead of like a 12.
Man, you put me on the spot there. That's you got to win.
Like,
you got to win.
Like
so
Syracuse, Virginia Tech. Yeah.
Here are the tough ones. Georgia Tech and Atlanta. Got to win it.
Yeah.
Can't not win that game.
Right. Yeah.
NC State at home. Got to win it. Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. It's okay if you lose that one. They've really got it going at a high level there. At Pitt, talented team, a little rugged. Dudes are always in trouble. Still, got to win it. Duke at home, you hope to compete. Wake Forest, at Wake Forest, that's a tough one, but that's one you got to win too. You play Virginia Tech twice, play Georgia Tech twice. Georgia Tech, you need to take care of. It's just, you got to win the games that you're supposed to win. It's a fairly favorable schedule as far as the ACC is concerned, because a lot of the big time scheduling's towards the back half of that conference slate, which is good when you have a young team, right?
Yeah.
But there's not really an easy one. You go down, you're at Florida State, January 28th. You're at Boston College. Earl Grant has got dudes up at Boston College and just like, where did that happen? Like Jim Christian had signed what? 1 4-star kid. Earl signed 4 in one class in his first full year of recruiting. Like things are going well up at Boston College. Miami at home, tough one. At Carolina, Florida State at home, tough one. They're going to be much better. Like, you're going to have to sneak some games that maybe you won't be favored in, but Brad has been able to do that. But looking at your schedule, like the league is better. You need to take care of Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
You need to be able to take care of Pitt. You got to take care of Louisville, because Louisville is going to be the Kenny Payne experiment is very intriguing to me, because I think he's going to get talent. I don't know that he's going to get Kentucky level talent, because Kenny Payne worked with Calipari for a long time. And Calipari he does some dribble drive stuff to create closeouts, but it's not overly complicated. Like, is Kenny Payne going to be able to put some things together to get his guys open? I'm intrigued, but they only have 10 scholarship players. I think actually 9 scholarship players. There's some holes there. Like, you got to take care of Louisville. Uh, a lot of games that aren't necessarily favorable. It's just you're going to have to, if you can rattle off and go 500 in conference, that puts you in the
Yeah.
tournament in my mind, pending how you perform in the non-conference. But you got to go 500.
That's what I was going to ask you, like how many wins, and usually you want to go above 500. But if the ACC is stronger, you can mess around, not mess around, but you can get that 500.
500.
Yeah.
Got to hit 500.
Yeah. So that all being said, like we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but as we're just kind of finishing up, like when you think of like what's successful for this team, I know the expectation, you know, especially for this coach, like for coaching staff, I mean, they need to make the tournament. But when you think of like from just a fan looking at this team, like what feels successful to you, like and just for this year, like what feels like
For the
realistic?
talent that they have, if they make the NIT, it would be a good year.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a good year. If they make the tournament, it is a great year. What that means is they've put together a hell of a season. They've put guys in the right positions, and their freshmen are much better right away than a lot of people expected. And then that's on top of PJ Hall being really good and being good early, because we alluded to their non-conference slate early in the season. There's a lot of really big time games there, Nick. Like they got to be good, and they got to be good quick. How quick they're going to be good? I mean, I feel a little repetitive in saying that.
No,
like,
I think it's a big
it is
thing.
what it is. Like you have to be good in the non-conference. You have to show well, because those are where your numbers are at, right? And then on top of that, like you have to go 500 in a league that's much better this season. And I talked to 2 ACC head coaches. I went around to a bunch of practices, and I didn't report a couple of the practices I went to, but I went around to a bunch of practices. The majority of the league feels as if there's 2 tiers. We alluded to tiers. It's the first 7, maybe 8, and everybody else.
Yeah.
If you can creep towards the top of that second group, you could make the tournament as a 11, 12 seed.
Yeah, I like it. So there you have it. I mean, I think that's fair. Now I know people have different perspectives on like, whether or not that's acceptable for a program, but I think like when you're trying to build, I think that's still good, because you're still making the postseason. You can build.
They need to make the tournament, Nick.
Yeah,
speaking, and I'm showing my fandom, and I'm showing my my Clemson colors here when I talk to you.
Yeah,
Clemson needs to make the tournament. I hate it when guys come around and say, "Oh, back in my day, we made the tournament both years," and then my class made the tournament all 4 years. You need to make the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that NIL is set up now, the way Clemson has put themselves ahead of the game. I mean, there are teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference that don't even have collectives in play. They have nothing in terms of NIL. I talked to several teams that were like that. They're just like, we have nothing. How can we compete with something like that? Clemson doesn't have that issue. Clemson should be getting dudes, and they got dudes in their freshman class. Problem is, they're freshmen, right? Yeah. And you got to find ways when you're that far ahead with everything else. Facilities are not an issue. Mm-hmm. Clemson has everything they need in terms of facilities. Academics are not an issue. It's a top 50 public institution in the country consistently now, ever since I was in school. Academics are not an issue. Location's not an issue. You're 2 hours from Charlotte. You're 2 hours from Atlanta. You have 2 massive recruiting bases in the state of North Carolina, state of Georgia, and a national recognizable symbol in the paw. You are now, with a success of football, with the facilities where they're at, with something to sell, and the collective being where it's at, you need to make the tournament every year. Point blank, period. Need to make the tournament. And I think if Brad gets through this year, and it's obviously on the tournament. It's obviously on the tournament. And the only reason I speak so flippantly about that is because it seems to be a pretty reoccurring thing. If he makes it through this year, the collective is going to take care of a lot of things on its own. Like the recruiting part, I'm not going to say it's out the window, but it's not far off. Because now it comes down to, well, I don't want to move to here. I want to make sure that I'm getting paid X amount. And that's how recruiting has gone here lately. That's the direction it's going here lately.
Yeah.
And with Clemson being ahead of the game, it's only going to help things. So you need to make the tournament every year. Hey, Clemson is in a financial position to do that. From a facilities perspective, you're ready to do that. From an administration perspective, you're ready to do that. All the support's there. You got to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. And especially when you're in the ACC, I mean, it's a perennial basketball conference. I mean, I know other conferences have been jumping, vying for that, but you're going to get eyeballs seen. It's just a matter of like, if you can jump on that. So I think,
look at your conference. Look at your conference.
Yeah.
North Carolina obviously has NIL with Jordan Brand and all that stuff. Virginia and former national champion, they have that caveat. They have that going for them. They have massive boosters at Virginia. There's a lot of money that goes through that school. Duke, duh. They've been running NIL for a long time. And I'm not even going to start talking about that publicly. Virginia Tech, I'd say Clemson is a little bit better off than they are. Miami, that's going to correct itself. You wait and watch. Miami, that one guy who's paying all those guys, it's going to correct itself. I would put Clemson pretty close there. Notre Dame, Florida State, Wake Forest has none. They have no NIL deal going on. Boston College has none. NC State, they're going to be able to start getting it going. They're just a little bit behind. You look at Syracuse, they should be, but I'm not sure that they're really jumping on board to do all that stuff either. Georgia Tech, none. Louisville does have some. We'll see how that goes. Pitt, they're the 8th sport in their city. So it's like Clemson's ahead of the game. They're ahead of the game when it comes to all this stuff. They should be succeeding.
Yeah. And I think
that being said, Nick, I want to make a disclaimer before you hang up on me. I want to make a disclaimer.
You're good. Yeah.
The rules weren't really the rules until just now. So there was some apprehension to spend some collective or try to use the collective at a high level because Brad and his staff have always done things the right way. And I can assure you that that's true because I worked on that staff. There was no nonsense happening there. None. I mean, was there a phone call made by accident? Was there a trip made that shouldn't have been made? That is a very, 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 very minor thing. And it has come out and been public, but it is a very minor thing when you look at the broader scope of what has been going on in college athletics for the past 25 years. That being said, if they get through this season, I see a lot of positive coming out of that because of the way things are going.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard great things about that. And I think too, we've just been in such unknown, especially with even college basketball. I think even more so.
It's such an unknown. People don't know. You didn't know if you were going to get in trouble. You didn't know if you were not going to get,
or where even the rules.
You didn't know what not okay. You didn't know.
Yeah. So now that we are at least it feels like people are in a more, people kind of know, and Clemson, you're right, has been such on top of this. I think there's so much support there. I think it's just now it's just let's let this thing grow and bloom. But I feel like this is a very important year for this Clemson basketball team. So I would say if you have the opportunity, go see this team, support this team. I'm super excited, but this is a very pivotal year. And if you want Clemson basketball to be back to where in a consistent NCAA tournament every year type of thing, I think this is we need to jump on this and just encouraging fans, if you have an opportunity to go.
Absolutely.
Go, especially in the non-conference. This team's a young team and basketball's you feed off the energy of the crowd. So that's just my disclaimer of if you can go, especially early, this team, super fun to watch, just a lot of new pieces to see how they fit. So that's my push. Please go see them, support these guys. And I'm excited to see where this goes. And I'm really rooting for this team to make the tournament. And
I am too. I am too.
I want to see
it. I really am. I love those guys over there. Like Lucas McKay and Aaron Stevens, who was just hired as a video coordinator, and AJ Morris, who's their GA right now. I recruited him to come to Carson Newman whenever I was still coaching a Division II. I want those guys to do well. Will Durham, Wes's kid, great kid. I work for Brad. I have a good relationship with Brad. I want them to be good. I really, really want them to be good. It's just the problem is now, Nick, is it's my job to analyze what can and can't go wrong. So I don't want to be seen as a negative Nancy, but I also have to tell the truth of like, because that's my job. Like if I'm looked at as a homer and Clemson's going to win the ACC and they're a final contender, that's just not the case.
That's not the case.
It's just not true. So like, I can't go over there and browbeat people into believing this team's going to go, the 30-2. It's not going to happen that way. They need to get into the tournament. And I think that's a fair assessment on my part. And I don't want to be a negative guy. That's the last thing I want to be. That being said, they need to have some success this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, we'll end it with this. I'm hoping that come this time in like March and April, you get on DTO and you can be like, guys,
DTF.
I knew that.
DTF. We go on Doster, T on Fanta, and I'm talking crap to everybody about how good Clemson has been this year. And Dylan Hunter is an all ACC level freshman. And you know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to do that. I really do.
Well, I hope you get to do that. I'm rooting for that just so I can see that Monday podcast. So shout out to that DTF. They post podcasts every Monday, I believe. And that's
we're going to be pushed back a little bit because Fanta's at St. John's today. I got to go pick up family from Atlanta, and then on Wednesday I'm at SoCon Media Day. Thursday I got a couple other meetings, so I think we're going to be able to put it out on Thursday. But once a week it comes out.
Once a week. That's
a fun show.
It's a fun show, and like if you just want to keep up with basketball, especially it's a fun show from a lot of different perspectives around the country. So Tio, thanks for being on and making the time.
Yeah,
it's always fun it's always fun to talk Clemson basketball and get a little more insight. And it just makes I'm just ready to go. I'm like, why do we have another like couple weeks before basketball now? I'm ready to go.
It'll drive you nuts. Nuts. Now, a heck of a tune-up game. Benedict College coming in as their exhibition. Side note, Benedict College's head coach, his son is a very good basketball player. A very good basketball player. He's going to be a junior this year, 6'6", unbelievable athlete, very good basketball player. Trey Maddox is the kid's name. But good tune-up game. Citadel, good tune-up game going into South Carolina, which is incredibly important. And then that non-conference slate just goes, baby. It just goes. Like, you're going to have to be good.
Ground running. Yeah.
Got to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So anyway, Nick, thank you so much for having me. I tend to ramble. That's kind of my niche, but thank you so much for having me, man. Always a pleasure to talk hoop with you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, thanks guys for listening, and we will see you next time. Talk to you later.